Angeles. I'm gonna get her name before this is done because I had
Good.
it all queued up, and then my browser crashed, and that's life these days.
That
The
is,
browser
yeah,
crashed, and that's like
yeah.
a bathroom break. So, but I'm doing all right. I'm here in Highland Park in LA, and things are pretty calm. I'm being safer at home, which is how our mayor has branded the quarantine, which is a very like California thing to do. And so I appreciate the softer vibe there. Um, and yeah, I've actually helping out my neighbor today. She had to get some prescriptions filled. I went to the dry cleaner, hadn't been out in a long time, but it was kind of interesting to check in with actual people in the community, not through
Yeah.
a screen. And the woman who does her dry cleaning had to set up her Bank of America online account so she could apply for the payroll protection plan. And she's used to doing everything like at the bank or with someone on the phone. And so she needed some help, getting the app on her Android and like creating the online ID. So this pandemic is like just forcing people to move in certain ways, and I hope she gets what she needs. But no major tragedies in my immediate vicinity
It's good.
to share.
That is the bar
Things
these
are
days,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
no
oh,
immediate tragedy, no major tragedies in my immediate vicinity. That's
great.
success. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I've been struggling with like how to introduce you to audiences who maybe haven't
Yeah.
met you before because I part of your entire MO is that you are a man of many talents and have done a lot of different things. And so, I mentioned some of your credits that you've done, but I didn't even mention, like advise the Obama White House and go on speaking circuits. And you are now inside the set of Inside Out, I believe, if
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
caught that correctly. So let me just start with how do you introduce yourself at like to strangers or at parties? Like what? How do
Yeah,
you?
so
Yeah.
it's really simple. I say, "Hi, my name is Baratunde,"
Oh,
and that's how I introduce myself. In terms of job titles and all of that, that can be trickier. I mean, my website is like an ongoing chronicle of an attempt to put myself in an understandable box. So, writer, activist, comedian, hosts, TV host. Essentially, I'm a communicator, and I
right.
try to communicate good things and inspire people to do things on topics that are generally pretty difficult. I like to talk about race, technology, democracy, and increasingly climate. And so, if I can use some of my communication skills, occasional joke here or there to make the pill of knowledge go down more easily, then that's kind of what I aspire to do, and how I try to define the work that's worth doing.
So your book, How to Be Black, is a
Yeah.
memoir in part, as well as what would you say, satirical advice or real advice? But
Yeah, yeah, it's a comedic memoir, it's a satirical memoir, it's definitely, like, true. I lived the life that is portrayed in the book, but then I also go way over the edge in terms of how I structured the book, and I had this panel of experts on Blackness who were just like 6 Black people I knew, but I figured they had been Black their whole lives, so, like, who better than them to talk about what it means to be Black? And one Canadian white man as a scientific control group because I believe
hmm,
in science. And so
that's
I
what
like,
the Canadians are best for, is
yeah,
being
yeah,
control
to
groups.
balance out the Americans actually. And you're closer to them than I am, so you probably know better than
Yeah,
me. Yeah.
we can smell the maple here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
wafts out.
we're all just one Zoom room away from each other now. So I like
So
to think we're all equidistant from one another nowadays.
a big part of your memoir and also your TED talks and things I've seen are about your upbringing and
Right.
your childhood, and I want to ask a few questions about that. But there's
Sure.
one in particular that I wanted to get to. So your mother is a really big figure in your book and in your TED talk and a variety of things. And you kind of throw out like all of these amazing things that she equipped you for becoming the person that you are today. That she helped you get to some amazing schools and in variety of programs. And then you have sort of a throwaway line in your TED talk that she also taught you martial arts.
Oh, yeah, that's how history gets rewritten.
Oh, see, that's why I'm asking.
So I'm gonna have to double check the TED Talk. I probably listed a bunch of things she encouraged really rapidly back to back. My mother did not teach me martial arts, though she did teach me the value of it because when I got jumped one time and came home crying, she was like, "You gotta learn to fight." Like she wasn't like, I'm gonna go find those kids. She's like, you got to learn to handle yourself. So yeah, I did taekwondo as a young person, and my mom just overprogrammed me. I think in part to protect me from idleness in a city in decline. It was Washington D.C. in the 1980s, as crack cocaine was ravaging a ton of cities all across the U.S. So she knew that like a busy kid, a highly scheduled kid, was likely to be a safer kid. So I was in the Boy Scouts. I had an Afrocentric rites of passage program, sort of like a Hebrew school for blackness is kind of the shortcut the way I think about it. And yeah, and I did taekwondo. I did aikido before I did
Oh
taekwondo.
yeah.
So she kept me very active, and I think it helped probably reduce some of the stress in her life with an energetic young boy having a
And
lot of outlets for that energy.
you talk about like you had you're part of this unique upbringing, I guess I would say, is that you had these extremes in some ways of like
Yeah,
education that you had growing up, right? Like you had, as you mentioned, you went to a Hebrew school for blackness, but then you also went to Sidwell, right? The school that people, if they've heard of it, it's probably because they know that like Chelsea Clinton and the Obama daughters went there, and so it's a
yeah.
very prestigious, school. And so you had, I imagine that those were very different and taught different things in some ways.
Yeah, your imagination reflects reality. Congratulations. Doesn't
Thank
always
you.
work out that way. And yeah, I'll just like to note that Chelsea Clinton and the Obama girls started attending Sidwell after I did. So clearly it was because of my presence, which encouraged their parents to recognize a quality, educational institution. Yeah, there were tugs. A lot of people live these dual lives. I think any immigrant could tell you a story, especially the child of immigrants, a story of living one foot in the land of their birth or their parents' birth, one foot here in the US. And I think I grew up with a sense of the narrative of inner city challenge and poverty and the things you read on paper as quote unquote disadvantaged. And at the same time, I had tremendous privilege and access. I had a very loving parents who like didn't abuse me and encouraged me to pursue my dreams. To have one of those is quite luxurious. Some people have two parents, but neither of those parents is supportive. So I don't see the absence of my father as necessarily just a negative, because my mother was such a largely positive influence in my life. And yeah, there were violence and drug deals and nefarious stuff happening out the front window, but I did get to go to one of the greatest, educational institutions in this country in terms of Sidwell, and then I went to Harvard for college. So I've experienced a lot of America, and I think it made me better, giving me a wider lens on like what it means to be a person, certainly what it means to be a person of the United States.
So is it fair to say part of the talks I've seen you give, and part of a big part of your book, How to Be Black, actually breaks it down into chapters, correct? What?
Yeah, I try to be very useful,
Yeah.
It's just like,
So what? Because some of those chapters are like how to be a black coworker, how to be a black friend. Is that?
yeah, that's right. That's right. And these were all spun off of, life experiences I had. So it's how to speak for all black people. Very important chapter, because if you are a black person who is in an environment not filled with black people, you will likely be called on formally and informally to represent your whole race. And so I just wanted to provide some pointers of things I had learned. I wrote a chapter called How to Be the Next Black President, assuming that we ever, got to that point again as a nation. What could we learn from the presidency of Barack Obama that might set the stage a bit better? And so yeah, it was meant to be semi-practical, semi-satirical, and an excuse to talk about, some of the experiences I had in a less direct way.
And the question I was trying to get to with
Oh
this
yeah, yeah, you had a question.
is sort of is part of it almost like a second level satirical note of just like how preposterous, like even asking someone to be like the black next president or the black best friend is, because that sort of pigeonholes that person as like, oh, you are this thing. And it seems
Yeah.
like that is your story as well. Like for years, like you lived in a variety of different places, and as you talk about, people probably tried to say like, oh, you're this thing, and you're like, no, I'm a lot of things.
Yeah, the whole containing multitudes thing. I think the book is an effort to communicate the absurdity of living in a world of other people's expectations. And sometimes those expectations they can be limiting in different ways. So some people, in my experience, would say, "Oh, because of all this education or the way you talk, you're not black enough." But then in a very different environment, they're like, "Oh, because of where you were born and how you talk, you are so freaking black." And it's like a little too much blackness for us right now because you turn down the blackness. So people are always trying to modulate how each of us is. And part of the journey of my life, and partly captured by this book, is just being. My sister is in Michigan. She has a yoga studio called Just Be Yoga, letter B. Her name's Belinda. I'm Baratunde. So just being is kind of this mission that I think both of our mother's children are on in different ways. And I tried to use the book as a way to let some people in who didn't even realize it. There were a number of people I went to high school with who didn't know, and they were able to read this book and be like, "Oh, I had no idea I was making things like awkward for you." And I was able to communicate that without shouting like, "You're a racist," over and over in their face. Because that wouldn't necessarily communicate the goal, which is like deepen the empathy. Sometimes it's worth yelling, "You're a racist," in someone's face, but not all the time. You got to like choose when to dust off that weapon. Um, so the book is trying to communicate that absurdity, let people in, and paint these scenarios that reveal what people expect from you should just be who you are, and you don't have to like bear the weight of their expectations. And that's come up in a lot of other parts of my work as well.
So you have a fantastic TED Talk that the whole cast and I watched before you came on, and
Thank you.
It's a great way of doing it, kind of exactly what you're talking about. That sense, you talk about deconstructing white supremacy and structural racism, and you talk about it in a way that is more nuanced and more, I would argue, probably effective than, as you said, just sort of standing up and saying like, "Oh, everyone over here is a racist." You actually make a very explicit point that you're like, "I am not here to say everybody here is a racist. I'm here to call out sort of like what the system is about." And you do it in this very clever way with sentence structure. And so I'm wondering if you can just say a little bit about how you do that.
Yeah, so the talk is called "How to Deconstruct Racism, One Headline at a Time," and it's built on a body of news articles that were popular for a moment, of white people calling the police on black people who didn't do anything wrong. Their crime was existing, and so folks who were inspecting their own house or opening up their own business or entering their own car or barbecuing around a public lake had 911 called and had armed men with badges in the form of law enforcement show up because some white person felt threatened by the mere presence of black people, I guess, in a place that they deemed they didn't belong. So I put this talk together built on the structure of these headlines. And I had gone through this exercise of like parsing the language and literally diagramming the sentence structure of these headlines, which revealed that all the stories are the same. You basically had, a white person calling the cops on a black person for doing nothing, for breathing, for living, for existing. And this is all under kind of the hashtag of living while black, which again was a very popular story for a time that followed the popular, more deadly stories of police murdering and committing homicide against black people for various nonviolent offenses like sitting in a car or being on the side of the road. So yeah, that was the goal. The talk is about that, and I try to deploy high school grammatical tools that I dusted off, and a little bit of technology and a little bit of comedy and some pretty good design. I will admit my keynote game is pretty strong at this point after years of presentations in the corporate world. I know how to put together a decent
I was going
keynote
to say,
deck.
who would have guessed that it would be PowerPoint that would fix racism ultimately?
Well, to be technical, it was Keynote. It was going to be an Apple product that would bring us back from the brink.
Sorry.
And
Well,
and
Apple
actually,
doesn't sponsor this, so
no, they don't. But a friend of mine, Brian, set the template, and then I iterated on what he provided. So much love to Brian Janosch for the initial PowerPoint template, which ended racism last year.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was gonna thank you for doing that.
I mean, look, I do what I can. I'm trying to be helpful,
That's great. One of the pieces that I love that you call out in this is just there's the racism piece, and then there's also like people maybe have this instinct that is inherently racist, but then their instinct is to call the police on all of these things,
Yeah.
even if you are like, that person seems like they don't belong here, why does it immediately escalate to, and so I will call an armed guard to come in here?
Well, there's two words to explain that behavior, Tane, and those words are white supremacy. And that was really the heart of the talk, was an excuse to try to define this term, which has gotten a lot of people very defensive, very animated, and very distracted. And so the way I laid it out is that, look, in alluding to your earlier point, when I say white supremacy, I'm not saying all white people are racist. I'm not talking strictly about white power activists or Nazis, though they are a subset of white supremacists. I'm talking about a system which privileges and elevates the interests of white people over others, especially when they're political, economic, and social interests. And so you look at the outcomes of a system and who's listened to and who's heard. And I think the reason that people call the cops and the reason that white people who are uncomfortable around black people call the cops is because they can, is because they've grown up. We've all actually grown up. We've grown up in a system which says that is absolutely the thing to do. You call on the authority to kind of clean up this mess, to secure yourself, to deal with the threat. And it's odd now, given the age of coronavirus, which is like the opening sentence to every weird behavior that follows. But we're all being asked to wear masks and face coverings, and as a black person, it's very confusing because on the one hand, like, I walk into a Walmart with a mask and I get kicked out, and that's happened. On the other hand, I get on a public bus without a mask and I get kicked out, and that's also happened. Like, both of these things are happening in America, and there's this fear of black people, and certainly of free black people, which says, okay, if you see some black people doing something that makes you uncomfortable and you don't know how to interact, right? It's like the combination of those things says, just call the cops. And the privilege involved in not considering what it means to call an armed law enforcement officer to a scene, knowing how those outcomes play out differently for folks of color than for white people. I mean, cops can abuse anyone and everyone, and they have, but disproportionately, going back to the system, they abuse people of color and particularly black people. So that phone call to the cops is potentially deadly. And the ability to not consider that is the result of white supremacy.
You have a terminology that I love because I think it's very eloquent. It's a horrible thing, but this term of weaponized discomfort in this.
Yeah. Well, you think about, look, I grew up in DC, as we discussed. I grew up sitting on my stoop. I grew up in a very communal environment where neighbors made eye contact, talked to one another. Now, that might have been because I grew up in an age before Candy Crush, but I also think there was a culture to it. There was certainly a black urban familial culture. And as cities start to change and have changed, as white people have returned from the suburbs to kind of reclaim their place in the inner city now that it's been deemed safe, they're bringing suburban attitudes of distance, of isolation, of privacy, of mine, versus ours. And that attitude is not strictly racial, but it kind of often falls along racial lines. It's something my fiance served as an observation because she's from the suburbs of Milwaukee, a very racially segregated city. And so you get these people in this communal environment, but they're not from communal environments themselves. So the way you deal with conflict is you just outsource it, right? You have somebody else handle it. Whereas when I grew up, if you had an issue with your neighbor, you just talk. You roll up, not threatening. Hey, could you turn the music down? Hey, would you mind if I did this? Hey, can I borrow some of that sugar? Like, there's many reasons to approach, but now there's an app for it. And sometimes that app is just 911.
Oh, yes. So on one level, I so want this to be true. And then I live in Minnesota, which there's the racial component. And then there's also just like a longstanding tradition of like, everyone's fine. Just don't.
Right.
Just fine. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. I'm good. Goodbye. And that's, we are not a touchy-feely, like, or connected communal people a lot of times. And I don't know how to, and so this is the last piece, and I'll say we're going to come back in the second half of the show and then open it up for if the audience has questions for you to send in via Facebook or Twitter. But one of the last pieces that really strikes me about the work that you do is it is about a system. And the system, I think, to a lot of people will feel so big
Yeah.
and so sort of oppressive. How can I possibly start to change that? And I think that you have like a very good narrative about and what you talk about, that, you know, a system is, you talk about a system is just a collection of stories. And so we have power to change that. Is that a fair sort of characterization?
It is, and look, the talk didn't fully solve racism.
What?
I know, maybe 90%, but that
Okay.
last 10% is a tough nut to crack. And so there are so many things that are doable in the fight for a more just society. And my talk is heavily binary. It's about race. You know, I wrote this book about race, but the themes of abuse of power are universal, and that abuse of power can be wielded in a way that is gender based, that is sexual orientation based, that is immigration status based. We all exist within a grammar, within a sentence structure, where we might actually be the ones with power and someone else is the kind of the target of our power. And so how are we going to wield that power? And the twist in the TED talk, to spoil it, is if you just imagined that instead of calling the cops on a little black girl selling water, as is one of the examples, you bought a bottle of water from her, or you waved hello, or you ignored her. And so, on the one hand, there are small steps that people can take on an individual basis to kind of change the narrative, change the story that we're living inside of. There are also more conscientious steps that we can take in terms of educating ourselves. And I think one of the great errors of sort of American culture is the degree to which we allow ourselves to not know our history. And so understanding what has happened, you know, reading really good books, reading Howard Zinn as an example, reading Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist or
Yep.
Stamped from the Beginning, both really, really essential books, reading The New Jim Crow to
Yep.
understand the world we're actually living in versus the myth we've told each other. Myths are really fun. It's really nice to have like a fun mythical story about who we are and how great we are. But that clashes up against reality every day for some people, and it can be very deadly. So we all owe ourselves the respect, the collective self-respect of knowing our history, not being constantly ashamed, not always apologizing for being American, but just being real
Yeah.
about what it means and what it has meant for so many people for so many years to be American. So knowledge of that history, and the last thing I'll suggest is an active engagement in undoing the systems that have been created. And so for those who are watching this and you're in a position of power in that sentence, if you're a white person, if you're like me, a male, then we have an obligation to do that extra work. There's a really great group called Standing Up for Racial Justice, and it's kind of oriented around white people who want to be useful, really constructive in
What a weird. I
this
don't know if I'm
battle.
totally comfortable with that. Useful and
Useful whiteness.
constructive?
Yes. There is a role for white people because look, we also have this. Speaking of myths, we have this myth that, well, you know, Martin Luther King kind of he like solved it, or maybe Coretta Scott solved it. Didn't Nelson Mandela fix that? What that was Obama's job. Like you kind of, I think there's a part of white America that wants like a really eloquent, you know, leader of color to just like fix it. Just if we just elect the right person, if we just follow the right account on Twitter or like watch Oprah at just the right time, that'll make it better. And the problem is you can't outsource this. We all have to do the work. I as a man can't just like hope toxic masculinity or misogyny, to name it more accurately, disappears. I have to actively work in my relationships with other men and other women and people on the spectrum in between to decontaminate the world. How am I showing up? How am I using my maleness? Am I only listening to the men in the meeting and assuming the women have nothing to say? Is what am I contributing to the solution versus the problem? So a white person also has that opportunity to be useful in the battle for racial justice, which isn't just about black justice. It's for everyone to live in a more just society. And if I could just stay on my like preacher pulpit for a moment,
Please, you're on a roll.
this virus is such a powerful, tangible metaphor. We often hear people talk about how connected we are, how we're only as strong as our weakest link. That is literally true. It doesn't matter if everybody does the physical distancing thing. except for North and South Dakota. We are only as strong as North and South Dakota are. If every county does it, except the rural counties, we are only as strong as those rural counties. If every hospital is sound, except the publicly funded ones that rely heavily on Medicaid to accomplish their mission, then we are only as strong as that public Medicaid dependent hospital, because we breathe the same air still. We get in the same cars. You think you're separate from all these other classes until you get in an Uber and you realize every class has been in that Uber. Every class has been in that public transit. Every class goes to that school or that restaurant or that bus stop. And so we are still connected. And this virus is pulling the veil away and revealing how interconnected we are, how unfairly connected we are at times, but how fundamentally we are all in this together. And so we all should be rowing in the same direction to get out of the mess and towards something a lot better. And I know we can. It remains to be seen if we will.
I completely agree that this virus is the best thing that has happened. So
maybe worth rephrasing, Tane. Maybe just that's like a dangerous sound bite to flow out there on the internet.
Okay. Well, I don't know. What could be more dangerous than saying that and then turning the stage over to our cast of improv comedy performers? So right now, Baratunde and I are going to take a step away from the camera, and I'm going to turn it over to the cast of the Theater of Public Policy. Their job is to take everything that we've just talked about and bring it to life through entirely unscripted improv comedy theater. This is all made up on the spot based just on this conversation that we just had. So please, wherever you are, make a big round of applause for the Theater of Public Policy.
Hey, Brandon, I really appreciate the fact that you decided you wanted to give me a gift for my birthday, but I'm just a little curious. It's a book called How to Be Black. What are
I mean, you shouldn't take that as a judgment of any kind. I mean, I used it, and man, I've learned so many good things.
How did you put the book to use?
Well, it's how many ways didn't I use it? I've used it. There's this tool I never knew about, how to kind of weaponize conflict. I mean, that's come in handy a lot.
You know how to, because I'm really relieved to hear that, because I was afraid that you were trying to tell me what I was supposed to do to be a Black person.
I mean, I don't have any credentials beyond being a white dude. I think that speaks for itself, but I think that does give it some authority.
You're being a white dude gives it some authority?
I mean, it's not a master's or a doctorate, but in a way it is.
Because I have to tell you that you being a white dude probably gives you the least amount of authority.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't be making presumptions, but I'm going to.
I mean, if you want to tell me how to be a white dude, maybe that's something you can talk to me about. But like, there's no set parameter around what Black is, right? Black comes in all different kinds of hues, in all different kinds of classes, of uses of language.
I'm starting to feel bad. It sounds like you already have the book. Did I give you a gift you already have?
No, that's not what this book is about. Did you this book is about helping you realize the systems that you've made that are a bunch of bull crap. But I think you just looked at this title and were like, Duck isn't the Black guy I thought he was going to be.
Wow. This birthday party has kind of gone south. I'm going to take the cake.
Listen, I do appreciate the piñata. I think piñatas are really fun. But, also, like, I think there were stereotypes about what you put in the piñata, right?
I mean,
it was a piñata full of chicken, and that just shows that your mind is in a wrong place.
Hey, I just wanted to talk real quickly about that piñata. Probably, yeah, we all know where this is going, don't we?
Oh, doctor, I'm just feeling, I'm not feeling well.
Oh, what seems to be the problem, young one?
Well, I just need a prescription and it'll just fix everything. So just prescribe me something to fix it.
Great. You just have to literally tell me anything about what's happening and I can actually probably take some semblance of the steps towards helping you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor. See, the thing is, though, it's uncomfortable for me to mention what's making me uncomfortable. So just fix it. Just give me some pills or a hanky or some sort of something to fix it.
Great. Okay, so just so I understand, you feel slightly weird about talking to me, a doctor, about what's wrong with you, and you would like me to throw a random pill at whatever problem you have because.
Oh, doctor, you get it. It's uncomfortable for me to talk about what's making me uncomfortable. So I just want you to do exactly what you did. Just somebody else fix it. Just fix it. I don't want to deal with my own stuff.
Oh, cool. Do have to point out, I am now feeling uncomfortable about this situation.
Oh no, it's contagious. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to infect you. Ugh. We need another doctor to get in here and fix all of this.
I actually know quite the chap. Brandon. Dr. Brandon.
Dr. Brandon.
Glad to be here. What seems to be the problem?
I'm uncomfortable talking about what makes me uncomfortable.
I've also become uncomfortable. It seems to be contagious, doctor. Isn't this your specialty?
Yeah.
This is solvable. It's easy to fix. I'm just going to hand you a bottle of pills here. So you just take these. You'll be all right.
Oh, great. Thank you. I will just take all of these ibuprofen tablets.
Oh, well, not all of them. I mean, you just take one as needed.
Well, there's no labeling on this packaging, doctor.
Shoot.
Yes, could you please roll down your window, ma'am? Yeah, just roll it down.
I'm so sorry. I'm just pushing so many buttons over here. What is it that you needed?
Yeah, we got a report that there was a woman driving a car in this neighborhood, and that's we can't be having that. So I've come.
No, absolutely not.
I've come to find out exactly what your intentions are.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, you are adorable.
Yeah, I understand that, ma'am. But why are you here at WrestleMania? I don't understand what you're doing here.
Well, you know, I'm just here to represent the 55 and up demographic.
Keep your hands on steering wheel, ma'am, please.
Sorry. Okay, so sorry. I am here to celebrate wrestling and Mania.
Now, don't you think
a normal 55-year-old woman would do?
Don't you think you would be a little bit more comfortable driving outside of your own establishment, like maybe a Joanne Fabrics or something?
Well, that is a great assumption. I have driven by many Joanne Fabrics, and I am just feeling like maybe WrestleMania doesn't have enough women of my age there, and I just thought I would come on in and just wrestle.
Well, I have to tell you that all of the men in this establishment find you to be a danger, and so I'm gonna need you to step out of the car.
I'm not here to be a danger. I don't know any of the suplexes or the duplexes or the Nelsons or the Nielsen's. I don't know any of the moves, so they don't have anything to be afraid of.
Can you put those hands back on the steering wheel, please?
Sorry, officer. I'm so sorry. I just want to just let me stand by the corn dogs and I'll just be fine. Everyone will feel okay if I'm near a long cylindrical corn dog.
Can I see your license and registration?
Oh, well, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel and I'm going to have to
keep one hand on the wheel and then the other hand to get the license.
Okay, well, I have all these Joanne Fabric coupons that I have to deal with. So, well, I seem to just have this flamingo. Here's my license. I will give this to you.
All right. Yeah, this seems like a pretty standard flamingo. I'm just going to give you a warning today, but I need you to go to a place where there are or more people of the female persuasion. Otherwise,
Officer, no, listen to me. You can't send me back to Joanne Fabrics. I know I may look like I belong there, but you know what? Joanne has all the power. And Joanne is using her power against all of us.
hey, you don't have to talk to me this way. You think I don't understand? Some of my best friends are women, all right? I understand exactly where you're coming from. We have women police officers on this force. There's nothing discriminate about this, but you need to go, as I've deemed you to be a public risk.
Oh, I just want to watch them do the body slams in person.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't like seeing you cry.
Okay, good. Officer,
Yes.
please come with me to Joanne Fabric instead. If I show up with you, a big strong man, they'll never let me back in that store.
Well, that I can do.
Son, I've taught you how to fight, and you've done it really well. But I realized, what kind of father would I be if I didn't teach you how to love?
Hey, oh, thanks, Pop. I really appreciate that. But I kind of told you a couple of times, love just really isn't for me. I like kind of being by myself.
Son, that's just because you're 13. You think you're too young, but everyone needs to love. And I'm going to teach you. It's easy. We'll get to the music in a second. First, we're going to show how to strike a mood. You got to light a candle. Get things started. Get it nice and down low.
All right, admittedly, I do enjoy the smell of cedarwood, Pop, but I just don't think you're really listening to me here.
I'm listening. I hear you loud and clear. That's part of love. You have to be a listening partner. And I hear you.
Well, all right, I guess I could give it a shot, but can I just put one thing out there? You love me as your son, right?
Well,
No, I mean, like, you're my dad and you love me, right?
yeah, of course.
So all I'm saying is that shouldn't you kind of respect what I'm trying to say here?
I mean, that's one way to interpret it. Another way is that, well, go on.
Isn't it a little bit absurd to kind of put your view of the universe out there and expect that the rest of us kind of fall in line with it? I mean, I do like the ukulele, but still.
Son, I'm your father. Your universe is my worldview. I'm going to give you everything that I believe, whether it's correct or not. You're going to inherit these bigoted opinions, and they're going to be yours, and you make them yours.
I won't. No, I'm not going to do it. I condemn your ukulele and your cedarwood candle straight to hell, Father. I'm going to make the world my own.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you over the music.
Yay! That's fantastic. Yay! Big round of applause, everybody, for the Theater of Public Policy. Yay! Clap wherever you are. That's great. Good, good, good. All right. So that was fun. For those just joining us, I'm Tane Danger. I am the host of the Theater of Public Policy. We are here with Baratunde Thurston, who is now in a very impressive library. Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to switch it up. This is a library in Chicago, curated by the artist Theaster Gates.
Yes.
And he puts beautiful art in the hood. And this is there's just a beautiful. It's the Architectural League of New York, I think, did a really nice piece on this library. So there's a lot of like Ebony magazines in here. There's beautiful stuff, and I happen to be able to visit Jet and Ebony magazines. I should say so. this takes me
Well,
back
this,
to that happy moment. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, so this is the part of the show where we open it up for folks at home watching to ask questions of our guests. If you have a question and you're watching on Facebook Live, you can just post it there. If you're following the Theater of Public Policy on Twitter, you can tweet it at us. If you, for some reason, have my personal phone number, you can just text it to me and I'll ask it right now. I got a note. I have to do this, which is that if you're watching and enjoying the show, consider making a donation to the Theater of Public Policy. This is the show that we normally do and would sell tickets for, which allows us to pay our improvisers, pay our staff, and everybody who makes this show possible. Obviously, we're doing this show now, and it's totally free, and we're so excited that you all are here, and yet we still want to be able to pay our cast and pay our people. And so if you just think about a ticket normally would cost $12 to $15, we've got links on our thing to our GiveMN page and our Patreon, and it would mean a lot to us and help us a whole lot in this challenging time to keep this thing going if you would chip in and make a small donation. So that is my pitch, and I have got the first question I got for you, Baratunde, which was somebody asked, has there been any surprises in your research/work when it comes to your understanding of our current culture/history and how things might change for better or worse?
Any surprises? Wow. I need you to ask me again. I just want to make sure I'm focused on what am I looking to be surprised about?
I mean, I'm reading part of this question as you have a very impressive background. You've thought about this for a very long time, but then you talked about you went into the process of writing this book and really digging into it in that way. So was there anything in the process of writing the book or doing the work that you're doing now that, I don't know, changed how you think about things from the time you started that to now? Anything that sort of turned out different than you thought it would?
I mean, it's a little depressing, but
oh, great. Good.
That's what the world needs right now.
Yeah.
It's just sort of brutally
Definitely
depressing.
what a comedy show needs. Yes,
honesty.
good. No, it's good. It's true.
Wait for it, folks. Here it comes. The intractability of oppression, I think, has been, when I was younger. I'm 42 years old now, and I'm like, hopefully not quite halfway through my life. And I'd say 20 years ago, I thought, we got this. Those cats from the civil rights era, they must have missed something, right? They must have, they forgot to like cross a T or dot an I. But we got it now. We got the internet. We got these hashtags. We're gonna put this to rest. And there's a resilience to systems of oppression, and then an adaptability of them. Where you're just like, oh, look at how it shows up now. Oh, that's fascinating. And if I were a totally dispassionate like alien looking in on our earthly universe, I'd be impressed with that level of adaptability and resilience. But because I'm earthbound and in the society, I'm more depressed by it than impressed, and sort of respectful, I think, of the size of the challenge. So the surprise has been the size of the thing and just how embedded into so many different layers of our culture these systems of like power abuse really are. That's actually that was surprising to me. I'm like, oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
This is a thing that it comes up a lot, and one piece that I'm curious about your take on this, and I ask this honestly without really having a notion of which way it'll go. You talk a lot, again, in your book about your mother, who is very much involved. You talk about her as a hippie and somebody who wanted you to understand African history, and you knew every country that was there. And so she was one of the people who really led you to this is an important part of your upbringing. If she were to drop in now and see what was happening, do you feel like she would be like, oh, they are making progress, or no, it's stuck in the same ways that I was fighting?
Right. I mean, I think she'd be offended by the cost of broadband and the lack of access to basic technology across the country still. And maybe the duopolies that control our wireless networks. But
I love that she would drop in from heaven, and that's like
Yeah.
the first thing. She'd be like, man, this broadband thing's ridiculous.
She's like, really, America? She'd be like, and your data policies are kind of oppressive.
Verizon is still.
Yes. She'd be like, I would have expected that to be broken up by now. No, what would my mother think, and what would people who are no longer here in general think? I think there'd be an acknowledgement of the ebbs and flows of this, and I think to counter the depressive, answer to the first question, there are these ebbs and flows to this, and there have definitely been very dark times of extraordinary lack of basic human dignity and rights, basic human freedoms that we are not, most of us don't live in on a day-to-day basis anymore. Some still do. And we have these ups and we have these downs. We had McCarthyism, and then we didn't, and Jesse Jackson almost became the nominee of the Democratic Party in the 80s, right? Like that happened, that almost happened. And so there's a lot to celebrate, and there's a lot of respect to be gained for the cyclical nature of these things. And there is no just like getting to a good place and staying there. And so I think my mother, who studied a lot of Buddhism and Taoism, which is even like deeper, would probably check the expectations that we're just going to get to this like hunky-dory, everything great place, and more about what are we here to learn? What can we gain from this experience, and how do we acknowledge the cycles involved in this and not take progress for granted, very importantly, but not also get stuck in a state of despondency, which is kind of the other end of the spectrum. Because there are times in this country, times that I personally have felt, oh, we're good. Like we made this great leap forward and we can only go forward from here. And it turns out in any moment, you can move in any direction. Like progress isn't just guaranteed. And you can regress. There's a whole word for it. It's called regress. And that word defines like a different direction, a backwards direction. But it also means that when you're in a dark place, when you feel like you're stuck and things can't be good, that you can also move forward and you can make progress. You can get unstuck. And we've done both, and we will continue to do both. But if we give up on either side, if we give up and think, oh, this is as good as it gets, we should just coast here, we will coast backwards into oblivion. But if we're in a dark place and we just assume that we're going to be stuck there forever, we'll kind of create that prophecy for ourselves and never get to the better place that was truly possible. So that, I think my mom would come out not with like a hip hip hooray, it's all going to be good. She knows it wouldn't all be good. She lived through times that were objectively not all good. But I think she'd have some respect for the ebb and flow of these things and to remind us not to get stuck in either.
We've got actually two questions that I'm excited about because they were things that I wanted to ask you about anyway. So from Julie, I have I'm going to ask you both because they work together. So from Julie, I have, you balance hope and comedy and gravity so well. How do you walk the line between those things, between comedy and gravity? And then there's a second question here that says, how does satire help make serious issues better understood? Why is that an important art form that you've focused on?
Right. So the balance, maintaining that balance, hope and comedy. I do a lot of planking, a lot of yoga, work the core. Core is good for balance. So it's not about having a six pack. It's about just being strong in your center. It's not about
the six pack's just a bonus that you have.
It's actually not. It's like you got to have a weird diet to get those kind of super six packs. You got to like only eat eggs and drink water and like do nothing else with your life. It's a very strange thing. But having a strong core is physically and metaphorically true and useful. And I don't know that I have an explicit approach where I'm like, today I'm going to be hopeful and also comedic. But it's emerged naturally because I probably inherited some hope gene along the way. I probably have the negative side of not wanting to face the darkness head on. And so I focus on the light that's available and always, in a tough spot, will try to accentuate, the way out and the good parts of the situation. That's not always a fun trait for people around me, but I think it's a useful survival instinct when things truly are dark to be able to find that light. And I think, there's outside of being comedic, I think it's probably clear at this point, I'm not always comedic. I'm actually a pretty serious person. I care, and I cannot be a harbinger of doom full time. I have moments. I had a moment. I do these weekly emails, which you can find at baratunde.com and /email. And I was just livid last week because a lot of things came to a head in terms of what's happening with the coronavirus /COVID-19 and who's bearing the brunt of it, who's dying disproportionately, who's being forced to work, who's suddenly deemed essential. Like all of a sudden we care about grocery store clerks and public transit workers, but not quite enough to pay them a living wage and provide them with health insurance not dependent on their employment status. So it really infuriated me because I'd also been in touch with people around the world as this was happening to know enough that what's happening in the US was avoidable. And so when you see an avoidable negative, that's malignant neglect in my view, not benign. It wasn't well intentioned. It was someone decided we're not going to act, and this is where we are. So I got really pissed off, and so hope wasn't at the top of my radar. And I did not send a hopeful comedic message. I sent a fire and brimstone kind of message with a few comedic bits from other people, but I had no comedy in me at the time. So long story. I don't always find that hope, but the balance is probably a function of my own psychological need to find light in the dark and a true belief that we need to be able to envision what we want, not just what we're afraid of, and what we don't want. And if we don't have an idea of where we want to be, then what are we even fighting for? And so I try to stay focused on the possibility, the good possibility that lay out there, because that's more motivating than just the fear of what's right in front of me. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to ask maybe another way to get at this question. When you do use comedy, and you do use humor, what is it that allows you to get at, or to get an audience or somebody that you're talking to grapple with or think about that, just doing brimstone and hellfire wouldn't let you get to them with?
So thank you, Tane. That's good. Way to rephrase, way to get me back on track, way to focus me. I'd say the comedy works in at least two ways, or for like two different parties, right? For me, and then for the listener, observer, viewer, reader, etc. So I'm used to thinking about this for the person who's not me. And so I'll start there, but I think it gets more interesting when I think about what it does internally. Externally, people, comedy is a lubricator, right? It's like an emotional lubricant. And when you're laughing, you're open. When a laugh is a connection. It's a signal of recognition of a truth, not capital T, the truth, but like something that's true enough that another human who didn't necessarily experience the exact same thing can identify it as yes. Someone is saying yes to you when they laugh. They're seeing the world briefly the exact way you do. And so if you take that as a positive outcome, right? Can I get someone who's not me to see the world the way me do? That's terrible grammar for someone who built a whole TED Talk on sentence deconstruction, but you kind of get where I'm going.
Oh, I do. I'm going to call your grade school English teacher, but keep going.
So if you can convince someone else to see the world the way you do, that is a victory. And so what are the ways you could get that done? Well, you could publish a research paper, right? You could have a well-researched white paper with data and charts and just have science and facts on your side. You could be very angry and just yell and be like, you're wrong, I'm right, here's why, blah, 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 blah. And you're so freaking stupid. You can like sort of talk down from your position of truth to what you see as a position of ignorance and try to somehow convince someone to climb that ladder toward the truth that you're inhabiting, even as you're reminding them that they're below you. And so I think, when you think about like psychology, and I've never fully studied it, but I've been around people for a while, folks are going to respect an invitation more than a shunning, and more than a shouting. And some types of people respond very well to facts and research and data, but more people respond to story and emotion and connection. And so I think to get it back to comedy, like comedy is a very powerful tool of story and connection. And that laugh, again, is a signal that the connection is live, that it's working. When people are laughing, they are literally with you. And sometimes we laugh despite some part of ourselves, right? We're like, I really shouldn't be laughing at this, because there's some truth in that thing that we're laughing at. Even if it's offensive, even if we're like ashamed or embarrassed, there's a kernel of truth. And so there's power there. And when you can connect with another human, that's power. And comedy is powerful because of that. So externally, that's what I've learned. And I don't approach it with such clinical, tactical detail. I'm thinking about this on the other side of having done it. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened there. Internally, what comedy does for me is it's a challenge. On the one hand, to think and communicate differently, because I can be very academic and cerebral and data-y, but to put it in a story or a joke is like a creative opportunity. It's like, oh, could I try speaking this in a different language? It's flexing a new muscle. And then on the other hand, for me, selfishly, internally, it's relief. And so as I've been thinking about the situation we're in, I did a whole riff on my Instagram live show last week about like, where are the libertarians right now?
I've heard from some of them. Yeah.
I haven't. I'm so curious, because these are the people who wanted to like shrink government down to the size where you could like drown it in a bathtub. And it turns out that's what's happened. And I don't feel like there's a ton of people in the current moment arguing for small government. If anything, people are like, where are my ventilators at? Where are my N95s at? Like, we have a need for this collective power in the form of government. But, it's very sexy for a time to be like, oh, the government's the problem. It's like, no, the government could be the problem, but it could also be part of the answer. Also, the vegans might have been right. Like all of these viruses are coming from animals. There's no carrot virus.
No.
Right. This is like swine flu and bird flu and wet markets from China.
Yeah.
Like it's all this.
If somebody hadn't tried to buy a bat.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, the animals have been trying to tell us something.
Yeah. Stop selling us in markets.
Yeah. Stop eating us. Eat those trees. Harvest those plants. They're regenerative in a whole new way. So to be able to find something playful, something light in all the darkness is psychologically useful for me, regardless of what it does for anybody else. Sometimes I think I'm doing this public service, and that might be true, but other times I'm like, no, this is self-service. This is self-care. And to be able to find the line of absurdity or humor and to enjoy something in this, it's just self-preservation at the end of the day.
So I've got one last question, which actually our cast member Duck wanted to ask. And so, Duck, do you want to pop back in? What was your question?
I thought there was in your section where you talked about white supremacy. I thought you framed it really well at the beginning to kind of, and you can tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong or not, but it really kind of sets the bar of letting people know that you're not calling them racist at the beginning, to keep them from throwing walls up. And I was curious in your interactions and your speeches, how much energy you put into navigating white fragility and the importance of it.
Ooh, too much, Duck. Too much. That moment in the TED Talk came after a bit of feedback from a viewer of a preliminary version. And this person had advised me to fully remove the term and the slide around white supremacy because it was so triggering for white people. And this person, very well-intentioned, was like, look, you have an opportunity to really be heard here, but if you go throwing that word around, it's just you're going to lose at least half the audience. And I'm afraid, in this person's words, that they're not going to get to the rest of your very, very good talk. And I couldn't do that. That was too far. But I did hear enough of what this person raised. I couldn't take their recommendation, but I could ingest their insight about fear and about the triggering. The triggering. And it echoes when you say, look, the triggering.
It does. It's a sequel to a movie in the 80s that I haven't seen. The Triggering, Part 2.
White fragility will be the death of us all. So knowing that these feelings, as much as I didn't want them to exist, did. So that's my job as a communicator, presenter, performer, to like not wish for the audience I want, but deal with the one I have, and not reverse heckle the audience for not being the people I want them to be. Like, you are who you are. And if I'm practicing what I'm preaching, I want you to accept me for who I am and show up, the way I'm like meet me where I'm at, then like I got to do the same with you. So out of respect, I needed to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who would be upset by this. What do I do with it? And I decided to be explicit. And again, I got to give credit to my fiance, Elizabeth, who was like, look, you have this opportunity with this talk, if nothing else, to just define white supremacy in like a user-friendly way. And so I made it, I cited Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative, another Black person. A lot of white people tend to be able to tolerate, who talks about race. And I was like, not just Nazis. I'm not saying you're a racist. You might be. I'm just not saying that right now. Like, that's a different talk in a different moment. And I don't know you like that. So we'll get to know each other. And by the end, I'll be able to say, Tane, you're racist. But I don't know that yet. We need more time. Good.
That's another soundbite for the internet. Good.
Yeah, Tane, you're racist. That's gifable. That's a meme right there. So yes, Duck, I spend time navigating white fragility. I did in the talk explicitly because it was the mission of that TED Talk. I do it on a regular basis because it is the mission of survival to kind of navigate that. And partly I think, am I just like naturally acceptable to a certain type of white person, where like I've been gifted / cursed with this ability to talk about race without freaking out every white person instantly. Some get freaked out 20 minutes in, some an hour in, some, a couple of days in. But maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe that's a piece of power. Maybe that's a damn curse. And then there's the other side, which is like, I've also just been trained. Like, it's a habit and a muscle that I've built up because I've been a part of so many institutions where I'm not the majority. And to go back to high school and college, and a lot of the workplaces I've been in, they were not designed for me. And so I had to learn to adapt and survive in them and still like exude meanness. Like, how do you be yourself in a place not designed for you to be yourself? So you come up with all these compensating tactics. And one of them is you get this little radar and like, how do I not freak out all the white people? And some of that, like, to acknowledge that is really, it's not just a good thing. It's not like, I'm so good at this, yay me. It's like, it's so sad that I have to be good at this. What part of me have I lost, by having to calculate in this way, in these micro moments? Thanks for the deep thought question that will now open hours of more self-reflection.
So I always, Duck, are you gonna?
I was just gonna say thank you.
Yeah. Great. Yes. So normally I would ask as like a final question, like, give us something to do. Like, what is it that we should do in order to, like, if we're very inspired by what you were just saying, to go out and try and bring to life what you're talking about. I'm very all of a sudden cognizant of the fact that that's horribly unfair. I'm all of a sudden doing exactly what your book's about, where I'm like, please speak on behalf of all Black people and tell us, white people, how to not be racist anymore, if you can, in a quick soundbite. So I will say that would have been my last question, but I actually had a better, I think, probably question from somebody in the audience that just asked, we're all in quarantine right now. What are you reading, or should we be reading? And so you can take any version of those two questions you like.
I am so grateful for this question. I'm so grateful. I'm going to switch it back to the Wakandan afterlife background. It's
a good sign.
How happy I am, because it's this crescendo. It's like a spiritual moment we're about to get to. So we've been watching this Netflix show. You asked about books, but I'm going to give you a performed book called a TV show.
Tiger King. Oh, wait, what?
I'm so glad you mentioned Tiger King, because I've been thinking about it again. I'm citing Elizabeth a lot in this. She's not here, but she's like present. We haven't watched Tiger King, and I was all about like, hey, I want to be where the culture is. I should know what my fellow Americans, be they idiots or not, are ingesting. And she named it last night. She's like, I know why I don't want to watch that show, because we've been watching a great show. a great show. It's called Gentefied, Genteffied. So it's like gente in Spanish, people, but also like gentrification, gentrified. So it's kind of a merger of those two words. It is also on Netflix. And it is deserving of multiples of the praise of The Tiger King. And I say that knowing I haven't seen The Tiger King, but knowing what that show is about and why people are into it is garbage. Gentefied, I'm going to recommend because I think it's like all the birds get murdered with one stone. And that's a terribly violent metaphor now that I've said it when we're trying to like be pro, positive and whatnot.
Yeah, we just talked about don't kill animals, but
yeah. But this covers a lot of bases in one swing. I don't know sports, but we don't have sports anymore. So yay, I win. Remember sports? I turned on ESPN the other day and they were in a fantasy land where sports were still happening. And I was like, is this pre-taped before the pandemic? Like you're talking about trades and the upcoming season like they're going to happen. That's adorable, ESPN, but I guess some people need their fantasies. So Gentefied is so worth watching because it is a really beautiful, comedic, smart, grounded, authentic story of neighborhood change. In this case, the Boyle Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles. It's anchored in a Mexican-American experience, which is not my experience. So I'm learning. This is not just me. It's like, watch the black show. Like, no, watch the brown show. And it does a lot of what we've been talking about. It names the thing that's happening. It doesn't just attack the audience for not knowing things. It's an invitation. It uses humor in a really savvy way. And I think it tells a different story. And because stories are so powerful in shaping our reality, yet so many of us are disconnected from the stories of our neighbors and our fellow Americans or fellow humans in terms of the experience they have. This is a very cheap way to try to walk for a few hours in someone else's shoes. And it's entertaining as hell. So check out Gentefied on Netflix, watch it many times and then tell people about it. Because there's also this thing that happens where because it's a show about Mexican Americans, a lot of people will think, well, that's not for me because I'm not Mexican American. But it's a show about people and it's a show about relationships and it's a show about business and it's a show about community and the jokes land. Like I get a lot of them. There's some I don't get. It's a bilingual show, but they have subtitles. So you might have to do a little bit of work, but the payoff is amazing. And so this is like a low hanging fruit thing. Watch the show. I'm deadly serious. Like watch it. You will be pleasantly surprised and then tell people about it, especially people who you are certain would never come across this show. That's a very small step, but I think a very meaningful one.
I love that. That is such a great note to end on. And it is very achievable for all of us in this time, which I appreciate.
Because if you don't have Netflix, you can borrow somebody's password who does. Like we all have access to Netflix.
I'm pretty sure we all just have like Gary's Netflix account, right? Like he just gave it out. Okay. So wherever you are, can you do a big round of applause for our amazing guest, Baratunde Thurston? This is absolutely fantastic to get to talk to him. I hope that you don't go anywhere. Wait just a little bit longer to go and turn on Netflix because we're going to turn it over one more time to the cats at the Theater of Public Policy, whose job is to one more time take all of these things that we've talked about, turn it into unscripted improv comedy theater. Again, all made up, all on the spot, all based just on what we were talking about. So please, a round of applause for the Theater of Public Policy. Yay!
Hey there, North Dakota. It's me, Minneapolis. I think that we need to talk about racism in the country. Like it seems like we've gotten a lot better, but you're not doing so well.
Hold up, I need you to speak a little bit louder. We got a lot of space over here. We don't have as much infrastructure that you do. Just speak a little bit louder for me, and I'm ready to go.
Hi, North Dakota. It's Minnesota.
Okay.
It seems that you're not keeping up with the rest of us, and it's making the whole country look bad as far as racism goes.
Okay. All right. That came through. All right. Okay. Well, we are sorry. We just
sorry doesn't keep me from getting pulled over. So
okay. You know what? I apologize. Tell me more things or nothing. Not on you. It's not on you to tell me things. I'm just gonna call up South Dakota. Hey, South Dakota.
Yeah. What's going on?
I've made some people mad and I don't know how to fix it. And I don't
want to out on your white supremacy again.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to do the thing where I ask the victim to fix the thing because they've already been hurt. So I'm asking you, my twin state.
That's
I need to learn some things, and I don't know how to do it.
That's okay. What you're going through now is white fragility. You've been called out. You're taking it personally when you got to realize it's a systems thing.
Yeah, no, there's no answer. I mean, I don't know the answer.
No. There is an answer.
Oh, can you tell
me?
It's not
that there's no answer.
Wait, what?
You just have to be sad.
So what's the answer?
You just need to fix things. Again, it's a systems thing. You just got to update kind of your processes, your laws, get more people of color in high-ranking positions at the state level, corporate level. I mean, we haven't done that. I'm not going to lie to you and say we have.
But you know that's a way to do it. So if we do that, we're at least better than South Dakota.
Wait.
All right, I got it. We're going to do all those things. We're going to fix our systems so we're at least better than South Dakota.
That's not what I was trying. I mean, you're trying to be better than Minnesota.
That is what I heard.
I think we need all of the links in this chain of the country to be better. So we want South Dakota to be better too. We want to be better.
Okay.
I'm in Minnesota, and that's already pretty bad.
I mean, yeah. Have you seen how you all drive?
What do you mean? What do you mean, you all?
I mean, all you people in Minnesota. You drive. Oh, okay. You drive like you're going to your lake cabins.
Fine.
Yeah.
Hey there, Prince Charming. I had a question for you. If you had 2 seconds there, is that okay?
Yeah, there's no problem.
Sweet. Yeah, sweet. So I was down by the Magic Pond Forest over there speaking to the mystical lizards and whatnot. They kind of told me that none of this is actually magic, that you kind of built this whole system based off of complete and total lies.
I mean, that's basically it. Yeah, that's summed up. I don't know what your problem is. What are your questions?
Well, I mean, quite frank, I didn't expect you to be so open and honest. You've been kind of lying to the Magic Kingdom for the last several decades.
Listen, everything's fine. It's not the lies that people have a problem with. I mean, that they can get behind. It's the bad broadband. And so I fixed that, and people are willing to let the lies slide because they have good 5G access.
I do have to admit, we're all very excited about the sheer amount of speed that we have in the social media. But also, all those princesses and stuff that you saved with magic or whatever, that's not true?
No, those princesses are actresses that I've hired. Oh. They're not, it's not true. It's just a lie on top of a lie on top of a lie. Like a wedding cake. All those fake weddings that you went to.
Like a wedding of lies. Yeah. I really do appreciate your honesty, A. B, I'm not sure why you had to lie to us for this entire time. You could have just given us faster Wi-Fi and called it a day.
Well, I mean, I read this book called How to Be Prince Charming. And I mean, it has so many good tips. And part of that is you just got to lie to people.
I can't say that I totally agree with this, but also I'm not a prince. But
so you don't get it. I mean, I could give you this book, but then you might be a prince, and other people are going to be princes.
You mind if I actually take a quick look-see at that? Actually, do you mind if I'm just gonna reach on in there and? Oh. Yeah. Thanks. Oh yeah. This is a book of stamps. You're just making stuff up as you go, aren't you there, Prince Boy?
Am I? Well.
Yeah, they're nice stamps, but I gotta tell you, I'm not sure that I trust you no more. can't say that I trust you no more.
Well, I still get to be Prince, don't I?
Hey, I was looking for a full-time harbinger of doom.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a particular size in mind? We have all kinds of harbingers of doom here.
Oh, wonderful. I'm looking for one that just doesn't get tired and doesn't wear out. The last one I had, it just like was doom all the time, and then suddenly it just stopped being full of doom. I think it just ran out of batteries. It got tired. It's hard work.
Let me tell you, I have the perfect harbinger of doom for you, all right? Like, it turns out that people really don't like these viruses that are going around. And we have a new harbinger that is a carrot-based virus. All right, our new harbinger is orange. He's about a foot tall with a bushy green crown, and he will make everybody, he'll put everybody in peril.
Well, great. I mean, it sounds a little bit comedic the way you described this harbinger of doom. I'm hoping he seems a little more terrifying than looking like a carrot.
Well, hello there. Do you guys summon a? Sorry. Do you summon a carrot harbinger of doom over here?
We did. She thinks that you're comedic. She doesn't realize how her tune will change once her grandma dies.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. She's gone now.
I will take that harbinger of doom. I forgot how frightening vegetables are. I've just been eating frozen pizzas. Thank you.
No problem.
Don't forget to eat your vegetables as well.
Ah!
Are you there? Hello? Is anyone there? Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh. Hi. I'm not sure how to phrase this, but I'm here to listen.
Mm-hmm. Go. All right. I just want you to know that you hurt me, Brandon. You hurt my ego. And I want you to know that if you don't think that Empire Strikes Back is the greatest Star Wars movie of all time, I don't know how we can move forward. If you don't like that movie, that means that you are the scum on the bottom of my feet. I mean, I've tried to talk to you nicely about it, but now it just seems I have to reverse roast you, right? You worthless piece of worm-ridden filth. You scruffy looking nerf herder.
And wow, those things really hurt. I was coming to you hat in hand, wanting to apologize for this, and you're giving me all these insults.
But the Phantom Menace? I mean, did you go to a school for people who just don't understand what a movie is?
No, I went to regular school, but when I hit play on this movie, I wanted to see something good, and instead I saw something bad.
Wait, when you pushed play on The Empire Strikes Back, you thought you saw something bad? Like the greatest tale of good versus evil, father against son?
I mean, I had a lot of questions.
Black, suited villain versus white dude who gets his hand chopped off?
I mean, part of it, but, who's this green guy? Why are there planes in the shape of letters? It doesn't make any sense.
Without Yoda, we don't get Baby Yoda, and everyone in the world knows that Baby Yoda is the best thing in the universe.
And then there's this guy named Baba T. Is that right?
Oh,
Baba T captured Han.
Boba Fett, you walking ignoramus, you personification of dumb.
And then that C-3PO, I could just use more of him, giving his lessons and pointing out etiquette. That's the part I really liked.
Well, I will actually concede that I think C-3PO is a better character than some people give him credit for. But you need to get on board with The Empire Strikes Back, or we're going to send you back to the idiot box.
I mean, the whole time I was watching this, I just thought, where's Jar Jar? You know, he was so funny in those first movies. Why isn't he here? And the other characters, I mean, nobody even mentions him at all. Like,
That's it. You are dying.
no. Ugh.
Hey, everybody! Yay! That was fantastic! Oh, that's so fun. I am so thankful. Thank you all so much. A big round of applause wherever you are for the Theater of Public Policy. Yay! People are applauding places. So, this has been a virtual show. We hope that you all enjoyed it. There are ways to donate and support us that are linked below, and I hope that you will do those. I will also throw out there that Baratunde on his website has his fabulous TED Talk, he has links to get his book, and he also has a Patreon. So if you enjoyed him this evening and want to support him in doing more of his work, you can support him as well. While we're still here, I'll say thank you so much to the Bryant Lake Bowl. I'm here alone at the Bryant Lake Bowl because we want you all to keep supporting it. You can go on their website and buy fabulous merchandise like this that makes sure that they stick around and are still here. Thank you so much to Finnegan's, who does beer that you can go and pick up at their Minneapolis delivery. If you mention the Theater of Public Policy, you get 10% off, so please go and do that. And thank you to our media sponsor, MinPost, who helps get the word out about all of our shows. Oh my gosh. All right, with that, I'm going to throw back to gallery view so that all of our fabulous cast and our guests for this evening can say thank you and good night to everybody. So, for the Theater of Public Policy, I'm Tane Danger.
Brandon Boat.
Heather Meyer.
Chris Rodriguez.
Duck Washington.
Dennis Curley.
And then Baratunde Thurston is down at the bottom. A big round of applause for him. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you had a wonderful time. Please keep watching and donate. This is probably backwards. I don't know. Okay. All right, good. All right, thank you. Dennis, play us out.
We are live, and the world's watching us tonight on Facebook Live or on YouTube with Zoom tonight. It seems like forever and 2 days since we were together in one place, but we muddled through. We are live. We're going live. P2P2 is live. We are live. See you next week, everybody.